picture this. You're at Heathrow Airport, getting ready to board a flight to see family in the States.
Yeah.
It's 2006. And
Yeah.
the world is, everyone's still kind of on edge after those awful London bombings just a year before.
Right.
And you get on the plane and get settled in, maybe grab a drink from the trolley, totally clueless that you could be sitting on a bomb.
Wow.
Like a ticking time bomb disguised as an ordinary bottle of soda.
Yeah.
Pretty scary thought, Tron.
It is.
That was almost our reality. A plot that could have been another 9/11.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it was stopped.
Thankfully.
All thanks to a really amazing operation. They called it Operation Overt.
Operation Overt, yeah. Those 77 bombings really, they really changed things,
Yeah.
Not just the tragedy itself, but the realization that, this threat of terrorism,
Right.
it had taken on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
And so suddenly authorities had to figure out how to deal with this, anticipate these attacks that could literally happen anywhere at any time.
So how did they even find out about this plot in the first place?
Well, it all began with this guy named Abdullah Ahmed Ali,
Okay.
British born, but he'd been on the radar of intelligence for a bit.
Yeah.
And when he came back to England from Pakistan, alarm bells started going off.
I bet.
Peter Clark, he was National Coordinator of Terrorist Investigations at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew they couldn't take any risks with this. He put Ali under 247 surveillance right away.
Oh, man. Talk about pressure. I can't imagine having that weight on my shoulders, knowing that one little slip-up could have just devastating consequences.
No, you're right. And what's amazing is that at first they really had nothing to go on.
Really?
Ali and his buddies, they were so cautious.
Yeah.
Used coded language, met in parks to avoid being seen, always changing up their routines.
So how did investigators start putting the pieces together? What were the clues that finally exposed this whole thing?
Well, it was a combination of things, really. Careful observation, detailed analysis, and a little bit of luck, I guess. Okay.
They started noticing this pattern of strange activities, like questions about hydrogen peroxide,
Yeah.
key ingredient in homemade explosives.
Oh, right.
And then this weird purchase of hundreds of soda bottles. Now, it might sound innocent at first,
Yeah.
but when you add that to Ollie's travel history and who he knew,
Yeah.
it all painted a really disturbing picture.
Yeah. I remember hearing about this back then, this idea of liquid explosives on planes. It was terrifying, especially because, after 9/11, we all thought security was so tight.
Yeah, and that's what made this plot so scary. These weren't some, crude bombs.
Right.
They were specifically made to get past all those security measures we had. Imagine being on one of those flights totally unaware of the danger just a few feet away.
So when did the British authorities finally realize how big this threat actually was? Was
Yeah.
there like a specific moment when everything just clicked?
It wasn't like one big aha moment.
Okay.
It was more of a slow realization.
Kind of a dawning horror as investigators put together all those tiny bits of information they'd been collecting.
Yeah.
They were tracking Ollie's every move, listening to his calls, and little by little, the truth started to come out.
Wow. So while they're uncovering this plot, they're also facing this huge decision.
Yeah.
When to act. Right. Arrest them too early, and you risk losing crucial evidence, wait too long, and, well, we all know what could happen.
Oh, absolutely. It was a tough call, a real balancing act. And with thousands of lives at stake, John Reed, he was the British Home Secretary then, he was thrown right into this pressure cooker,
Wow.
forced to make decisions with potentially disastrous results.
And I bet the U.S. was all over them, too.
Yeah.
Especially after 9/11. Yeah. Did the British share their intel with the Americans right away?
They did, but with a pretty important condition. They needed more time.
Yeah.
You see, the British, they wanted to take down the whole network, not just stop one attack.
Right.
It was a long game for them. They knew catching the small guys wasn't enough.
Yeah.
They needed the mastermind, the
Right.
one pulling the strings from the shadows.
So while the British are carefully piecing together their evidence,
Yeah.
the U.S., understandably, they want to neutralize this threat fast, so they launched their own covert operation in Pakistan
Right.
to grab the alleged mastermind, Rashid Ralph,
Yeah.
which adds a whole other layer of complication to this, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it really shows the tension between gathering intel and taking action.
Yeah.
You have the British, they're all about thorough investigation, building a solid case. And then the U.S., they need to get rid of this clear and present danger.
Right.
And all this is happening in a world still traumatized by 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that U.S. operation to get Rolf in Pakistan really messed things up. The British had been so careful, so patient.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, bam, they had to move faster.
Right.
They knew if they caught Rolf, the whole network would shut down. It was like a big game of Jenga. One wrong move and everything collapses.
So they had to move quick, but they also couldn't afford to mess up.
Right.
So how'd they manage to make the arrest without tipping off the suspects?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
They had this undercover officer. They called her Rachel.
Rachel.
Her job was to watch Abdullah Ahmed Ali and Assad Sawar.
Okay.
Two of the main players in this whole thing.
Yeah.
The plan was for another team to come in and arrest them.
Mm-hmm.
But things didn't exactly go to plan.
Oh, no.
The arrest team got delayed, which left Rachel in a really tough spot. I mean, she's undercover, no weapon.
Right.
And suddenly she's got to catch these two guys who are planning a huge terrorist attack.
Well, talk about trial by fire.
Totally. But Rachel, she stayed calm.
Good for her.
Despite all that pressure, she and some of the surveillance team moved in fast.
Yeah.
Caught Abdullah and Assad completely off guard.
That's amazing.
It was textbook perfect courage under pressure.
So they got the leaders. What about the rest of the group?
Right.
Did they catch everyone involved?
They did, thankfully.
Oh, good.
That night, they did a bunch of raids all over London.
Wow.
And grabbed the rest of the network.
So Operation Overt, this incredible intelligence gathering, surveillance international cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
It all ended with the arrest of all 18 suspects.
That's right.
That's incredible. I mean, what an achievement.
It really is.
But I'm guessing the work didn't stop there.
No.
What about building a case and getting convictions?
Well, that's where all that careful work by the British intelligence and law enforcement really paid off.
Right.
Remember, they'd been watching this group for weeks, gathering information, intercepting calls, building their case piece by piece. They had tons of evidence, like recorded conversations, travel records, forensic analysis of the bomb-making stuff.
So they had better rights.
Basically.
Did they all go to prison?
They did. Justice moved pretty quick.
Good.
12 of them were convicted of terrorism charges. Okay. Some of the main guys, like Abdullah and Assad, got long sentences.
Yeah.
It was a huge win for law enforcement.
Right.
And a strong message to anyone thinking about doing something similar.
It really makes you think that these threats are real.
Yeah.
And the people working to protect us, they're often risking their lives.
Absolutely. Operation Overt, it shows how dedicated and brave these people are.
Yeah.
Working behind the scenes to keep us safe. People will never even know their names.
It's true, and it also raises some big questions.
It does.
About what this operation means in the long run.
Right.
And how it changed how we fight terrorism.
Exactly. And that's a perfect lead-in to part 3, where we'll look at the legacy of Operation Overt and what it means for the future.
So welcome back to our deep dive into Operation Overt. We've talked about the plot, the amazing work the investigators did, and those high-stakes arrests. But like we were saying before, the story doesn't end there. This wasn't just about catching these specific people. It was about figuring out this new kind of threat and how to stop it from happening again.
Right, exactly. Operation Overt was a real turning point. I mean, it showed us a huge weakness in airport security, that liquid explosives could actually get past all the screening they had in place.
Yeah, I remember those days. All of a sudden, we're all freaking out about what we could bring on a plane. No more big shampoo bottles in your carry-on.
Exactly. And it wasn't just a little hassle. Those 3-ounce limits on liquids, checking carry-on bags more carefully, those full-body scanners, that was all because of Operation Overt. It made everyone rethink security all over the world.
So in a weird way, this plot, as scary as it was, actually led to airport security getting a major upgrade everywhere. Talk about unexpected results, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it wasn't just airports. Operation Overt kicked off a bigger change in how we fight terrorism. It's called intelligence-led policing.
I've heard that term before, but I don't really get it. Can you explain it a bit more?
Sure. In the past, a lot of counterterrorism was reactive. You know, waiting till after an attack happened. Right. Then trying to figure out what went wrong and who did it. But intelligence-led policing, that's about being proactive.
Okay.
Using information and analysis to find threats before they even happen. It's about connecting the dots, seeing patterns, and figuring out what they might do next.
So it's like playing chess. You always have to think a few moves ahead.
Exactly. And this shift, It happened because people realized the old ways of law enforcement weren't enough to handle this new kind of terrorism. Groups like the one behind Operation Overt, they were really organized, flexible, and determined.
Right.
They were finding the holes in our defenses, using everyday things to make deadly weapons.
And technology must be a big part of this now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine the stuff they're using these days to track and watch potential threats.
Oh, absolutely. There's been a huge increase in surveillance tech, data analysis, even checking social media. You've got facial recognition software, security cameras everywhere, and all that data coming from our phones and computers. But it's tricky because more surveillance also means worrying about privacy and our freedoms.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like we're always trying to balance safety and freedom. Operation Overt really shows that struggle, doesn't it?
It does, and it's a debate that's still going on today. Where do we draw the line? How much privacy are we willing to give up for security? Tough questions with no easy answers.
Well, I think that's about it for our deep dive into Operation Overt. It's been fascinating, even if it's a little scary too. What stands out to you most from this whole story?
For me, it's realizing that the fight against terrorism, it often happens in secret. This constant battle against an enemy you can't even see. And it shows how dedicated and skilled these people are, working behind the scenes to keep us safe. People will never even know their names.
And for me, it's a reminder that we can't ever get complacent. The threat is real and it's changing all the time. We have to be alert, informed, and part of the conversation about how to keep our society safe without giving up our freedom.
Very well said. And for everyone listening, I hope this deep dive has given you a glimpse into the world of counterterrorism and the challenges we face in a world after 9/11.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. And if you like this episode, make sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations of history, science, and everything about being human. Until next time, keep those minds curious.